Welcome to today's Farm Life. I'm Doug Cunningham. We're at the Jessen Ranch just east of Pierre, South Dakota. Interesting little bit of information about the Jessen Ranch. This ranch was homesteaded before South Dakota was even a state, a long time ago. Steve Jessen helps us start way back at the beginning when Klaus Earp homesteaded this place 138 years ago.
My great-grandfather, Klaus Earp, was born in Frankfurt, Germany. He sent it over into Iowa. He was a engineer by trade, and as a young man he heard about the land out west here that was being settled and up for homesteading, so he rode train to Harold. Harold wasn't there, it was just a boxcar on the end of the tracks, and he walked out here south and I think found the rockiest knoll he could and decided to homestead it. He planted his trees and he proved up on his homestead, and for that he got a half section of ground. To keep his land, he had to plant trees on it, maintain it, and prove up, meaning put improvements on it, and he had to spend a winter here. And there wasn't many of them that done that and survived. He would walk everywhere he went, and pretty much, I mean, you could imagine it'd be like you going to the moon and deciding to live there. I don't know if they make them like that anymore.
Now, Steve did tell me at the turn of the century, when his great-grandfather built a house on the homestead, it was admired by many because it had amenities that were way ahead of its time.
In 1920, when he built that, he had all the amenities. That house had running water in the very upstairs. He designed that. He built a pressure system on a windmill to force water up. It was modern in every way. It had gas lights in it. He had gas lights piped to his horse barn and his cattle shed. He had a hog barn long before its time. The manure run to the center, run out a gutter, and he had a lagoon, and that was probably in 1912. His mind was fascinating. The house, he had an underground cellar underneath the basement for his refrigerant and all his food. Man, a guy can just go on and on. He was a very, very productive man.
According to Steve's dad, Marvin, his grandfather was a pretty tough old bird that seemed to do an awful lot of walking.
Oh yeah, he heard about the free land out here in South Dakota, and so rather than staying in Iowa, he thought he'd come out here and get some of this free land. And after he got here, of course, he didn't have any money, so he walked back and forth. He walked out to the Black Hills and got jobs in the lumber camps and stuff like that. And then he'd walk back, and he 40 miles a day was what his average was, yeah. Yeah, and I don't know how many of you walk 40 miles a day across the prairie, but that's a hell of a job. He had to have been a tough old boy.
According to Steve's aunt, Dolores Husted, her grandfather, Klaus Earp, was one of those kind of guys where when he walked into a room, some of the kids didn't stick around very long.
His mode of travel was a lot of walking around and stuff, because I remember our mother said that he would come up to the Heeb family. He'd walk up there, and the kids were scared to death of him. He had this huge beard and stuff, and he looked like a mountain man of some sort. And the kids would run and hide when they seen him coming. They were scared to death of this guy, you know. And so I think he probably, I'm thinking maybe by just listening to people that they were just a little bit leery of him, because he was different. He was a man, like Marvin said, you know, he'd walk to the hills back and forth. He wasn't just an ordinary individual. He was rugged.
According to Steve's uncle Ronnie Jessen, he remembers one year in particular, his senior year in high school, 1962. It was a pretty bad year that year.
We had a prairie fire up there by Harold. A neighbor was, the guy was hauling a hay home on a windy day, and he looked back, and his rack full of hay was on fire. He was going into the wind, and the John Deere threw out a spark and lit her up, and he got scared and pulled her off into a hay field and unhooked it, and didn't realize that there was a summer fallow field on the other side of the road. And the thing took off so fast, started there by Harold, and it went all the way down to Gan Valley there. And that was a terrible fire, burned everything up.
Now, Steve did tell me that when you step into the role of caretaker of an operation that's been in the same family for this many years, it has its responsibilities, and it does carry a little weight.
It is a lot of pressure, I guess it's just something you do. It's pretty big boots to fill, but I mean, it's just, I guess we'll call it pride and, wanting the legacy to go on. I just, it's hard for a lot of people to imagine. I have a lot of people tell me, you never go anywhere, you never do anything. This is my life. This is my pride. I don't want to go everywhere. This is it. Seeing this grow and get bigger and better, that's kind of my life.
138 years of history and counting here at the Jessen Ranch, just east of Pierre, South Dakota. Remember, feel good about what you do today, because what you do today is very important. Until next time, for today's Farm Life, I'm Doug Cunningham.